Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Democratic Newsroom, our weekly show here at the India Today Newsroom, where we take the biggest headline of the week and discuss it amongst ourselves, uncensored, and this is recorded live, so you get it completely unedited. Gaurav, Nabila, myself, Shiv, Preeti and Nalini are today putting on the table the story that has dominated the headlines for the last 1 week. The heinous, horrendous crime in Kolkata where a young trainee doctor was raped and murdered. It's a story that has reminded all of us here in the Democratic Newsroom about coverage of the notorious Nirbhaya episode 12 years ago. And that's why the question we're asking today is about rape and murder and about whether anything has really changed. Because, viewer, the truth is, what we felt 12 years ago is being felt by many people and an entire new generation today. So we're asking, what happened to all that anger? What happened to all that will for change? Why are we still talking about the safety of women? I'm going to start with Preeti. Preeti, me, and all of us here were out on the streets of the national capital, Delhi, 12 years ago, Preeti, feeling the same kinds of emotions that people are feeling now. Your first comments on why it seems today like nothing has changed.
Well, you know, Shiv, because there was Nirbhaya, there was Gudiya, after Gudiya there was Hathras, there was Manipur, and there were so many else in between all of that. In terms of policing, in terms of politicizing, I don't think anything has changed. But what I think has changed, and I think in a very limited way, is, and I'm just looking at the silver lining, if there is one at all to any of this, is, you know, the perversive act of victim blaming. I think that seems to have shifted slightly. And that is huge, at least in the minds of, you know, the victim and the people as such. At least we are having conversations of, it's not her fault. You know, otherwise, I would think if this would have happened in the times of Nirbhaya, we would have seen a lot more commentary coming in of blaming this 31-year-old. That is not happening. But what hasn't changed at all is the sheer fact that in terms of politics, in terms of policing, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's one case after the other, then after the other, and then the other one. So nothing in terms of politics, policing has changed. What might have changed is maybe for some of us, at least, I'm not talking about the majority which live in the rural belt and have to face this so much more, but the middle class possibly, because as victims, as people, we always automatically blamed the victim. I think there is a positive shift in that.
Okay, we're seeing much less of that. There is no doubt about it, even though there were some voices who were wondering about why this particular doctor, this young doctor, was sleeping alone in a seminar room, which actually goes down to the lack of a place for young doctors to actually sleep. And Nalini has been reporting on that. We'll come to that in a minute. Gaurav, has anything changed? Does it feel like anything has changed? 12 years is a lifetime.
It indeed is, and unfortunately I see absolutely no silver lining. What is worse is the selective approach that's usually adopted. You know, fish rots at the top, and here we see, right at the top, we see very dirty politics. We saw that, you know, what happened at Hathras is what is happening here, in the sense of body being burnt at, being cremated at night, a body being cremated at night, a crime happening there. You know, the outrage. So if it's happening in a Hathras, we'll see selective outrage. If it's happening in Bengal, we'll see selective outrage. So it's more about politics and less about gender justice for that unfortunate woman in Hathras and here in Bengal. That's point one. Two, everybody is commenting about the outrage brigade. You know, people who were rushing to Hathras are suddenly missing in Bengal, or some are now being called the Lapata ladies. So why are they Lapata ladies when it comes to Bengal? And that's a huge problem. It's a problem when you make it all about politics and less about gender justice. That's point two. Point three, you know, not even talking about a systematic probe. There must be a standard operating procedure where a probe must take that line. If it isn't, then there should be a problem. And that brings you to that big issue of police reforms. You always talk about it, but you never do it on ground because no political party wants to let go of the police, and gender justice is just one of the many things that takes a big hit because of this politics, and that's why women don't get justice.
There's a lot of politics always in rape crimes, and that appears to be something that hasn't changed at all from any side, Nabila. But, you know, 12 years ago, and you reported on these crimes as well in different parts of the country, why does it feel like nothing has changed?
Because I feel that as much as we've changed as a society and evolved to respect women, and our workspaces shows that there are more women involved, there are, women in powerful positions, I still feel there's no deterrent when it comes to actually ensuring that rape does not happen. First of all, I feel it's a personality trait. If a man wants to do something, he will do it. I just feel that that's a personality trait which whatever law that comes in place, like this man, Sanjay Roy, says, yeah, hang me. I did it, hang me. So he's willing to take that punishment. More importantly, I feel it's the impotency of our judicial system. As much as there are laws in place, it's just on paper. It actually isn't implemented the way it should. Nirbhaya itself took 8 years to get justice. Our legal system literally stretches this to such an extent where justice late is justice denied. It's as simple as that. And more importantly, it all comes down to politics. Nobody really cares about the actual victim or the family. They're all thinking more of who's going to benefit, which political party will benefit, firing at a different political party over the shoulders of the victim's family members. That's what's dirty.
Nalini, to bring you in, the Nirbhaya case, and all of us remember it and you covered it as well, is that when, committees were sat down to look at the laws, stronger laws were brought in. I remember the anger at that time feeling like it was resulting in nobody was naive enough to think that there was this silver bullet against rape. But there appeared to be some real action. Time-bound cases, fast-track cases. Some protocols were shifted, if I'm not mistaken, where, complaints could be registered much easier, making it easier for people to actually register such complaints. Why does it feel like none of that has actually reflected in the last 12 years? Or has it just evaporated?
No, I think there are a couple of reasons for that, why it seems like it's not reflected. So whenever a case like this happens, like when Nirbhaya happened, there is so much media pressure, there's so much society pressure that politicians, government, just to save themselves from the backlash, they think it's important to bring in a law that will show some progressive action.
To show action.
Yeah, just to show that they've done something about it, which is exactly what happened in Nirbhaya case. I think 6 days after the incident is when the Justice Verma committee was set up.
Correct.
They were given 1 month to file their report, submit the report, and within less than 6 months, I think the new bill was brought into the parliament. The problem with this is that when you're talking about legislations, specifically with regard to issues like women's safety, they have to be well thought out legislations that actually tackle the lacunas in the system, not just impulsive legislations to make the politicians feel safer that they've done some action, they've taken some action. Now, like Preeti gave the example, that the victim blaming has lessened. The reason for that might be because after the Nirbhaya incident, they specifically brought in a law that the character of the victim is not going to be under scrutiny during a trial, which completely put out of the window the entire aspect of what the victim was wearing, what she was doing, where she was.
So bringing that up it can get you into trouble now.
Precisely,
right.
Because there was a law that was brought in. So sometimes the law follows the society, sometimes the society follows the law. The problem is that on an issue like women's safety, the law and the society have to walk hand in hand. If you bring in stringent laws, which our government has done, but there is no actual implementation on the ground, then that's not going to result in anything. There is going to be no deterrent. Rapes, like we are seeing, is continuing.
So are you saying it's an issue of enforcement of existing laws?
Definitely.
Simply enforcement?
Yes. Enforcement of an existing law, and also the fact that these laws are brought in as a remedial measure to something that's happened. The same way that we saw after Unnao and after Hathras, if I'm not wrong, in 2018 also there was another amendment brought in because the government was facing pressure regarding these rape cases.
Preeti, bringing in the politics of it and, the selective outrage, I have to say, and we've been covering it here on India Today, is from all sides. There is no party that can cover itself in any glory when it comes to the issue of selective outrage, especially on issues of crimes against women. But does politics sort of muddy the waters in a way that takes away from the pressure to actually bring in real change? Like Nalini was saying, and that's very telling, it's political pressure finally that, gets the incumbent to make new laws, sit down committees, and make it seem like action has been taken when, none of this really impacts anything on the ground.
Well, Shiv, you couldn't be further from the truth. But number one, with also what Nabila said, statistically, let's just look at it. Since Nirbhaya happened to where we stand right now, crime against women heinous crimes against women have risen by about 34%. In Delhi alone, the conviction rate for rape is less than 17%. So this is what we're looking at statistically, how badly we are doing. Number two, I think one thing we all understand and we have accepted, and we should just make it clear that at least the Indian state, and when I say the Indian state, it means governments at every possible party, governments at each state and the one at the center are no ally of women in this country. And we've got to say it very openly, and we have to accept it when it comes against crimes against women. They are not our allies. And why do I say that, Shiv? And that's why I find words like, which Gaurav used, like Lapata Ladies Brigade, deeply problematic, because it's not the purview of one particular government. Mamata Banerjee might have a free hall pass in this today because Smriti Irani allowed it in Hathras, because somebody else allowed it earlier on. So it's a constant passing of responsibility. And also, when you're going to compare this to Hathras, there's also misinformation. And Hathras, the parents admitted that the body was burnt without their permission. The parents here did it of their own volition. So that's one part of the misinformation there. But number two, which is, I don't know, and I find it very, very difficult to believe in hindsight when you look at it during Nirbhaya. You know, I remember the kind of outrage that was, because you had a Sheila Dikshit at that time, if you remember, who came out and said that if women go out late, if you remember that comment. Yes,
case,
and a similar statement was made in this case as well. From there on, tell me one one political leader or one political party that has actually come out very openly if a crime has happened in their own state and moved on to a total cleanup operation and to take full responsibility and accountability of the situation. Remind me, because I can't seem to find one government who has done so. And it's happened, like I said. And then it's also assisted by what we term, which is a word I hate again, ecosystems. Because then the ecosystems interpret it in whichever light they do. Did the ecosystem then question Smriti Irani, who was silent on Hathras, silent on Unnao, silent the NCW chief, silent on Manipur? No, that ecosystem did. Did this particular ecosystem react when Mamata Banerjee immediately replaced the principal only to reinstate him, at an equally prestigious institute? No, this ecosystem did not react to it. So, to get into suddenly there is this brigade, Lapata ladies. The fact is, Lapata ladies are on either sides of the divide. Let's just accept it. Lapata ladies are assisted by a strong ecosystem which you run. Let's just accept it.
Well, that's exactly, that's exactly the point I was trying to make. That because there is this ecosystem of Lapata ladies on either side of the divide, women don't get justice. True. And it's high time that women just got out of this Lapata ladies syndrome, and society got out of this syndrome.
And why ladies, Gaurav? Why ladies? Let's talk about some men as well.
And raise this issue, because, it's just made out to be this case. Oh, so there is this comparison is not that this comparison is there. Hello, it's a case of you want justice for that woman, both in Hathras and here and elsewhere across the country, right?
No, I'll give you some more examples.
I'll give you some. So when you talk about politics of rape, that takes center stage, unfortunately, what is happening is, because politics becomes very important, women are political class, and I want to focus on the political class in the police. They will say that okay, even when you're tying up with somebody who says ladke hain galti ho jati hai, to wo bhi, that is also kosher, or if it's not kosher, you will turn a blind eye to it. Or something of equally heinous on the other side, if there is somebody who's sitting for justice, whether it's a wrestler sitting on justice and you're unable to get justice for a wrestler, that issue is not taken up in the emphatic way it is. My only point is, take up every case with equal gusto, ensure there are systems in place, ensure that there is, look, I have a major issue with that juvenile in conflict with law. If his crime is the most heinous, like in the case of Nirbhaya case, as was alleged, then that juvenile in conflict with law should have got the harshest possible punishment, and perhaps our entire political class should have come forward for that. If it's a heinous crime, it should be a heinous offense. For that crime. Just because he's juvenile in justice with law, by 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, let him not have access.
Quick reply from Preeti, and then I'll come to you, Nabila.
No, I do agree with that. I do tend to agree with the fact that it should cut both both ways, but not in retrospect. Because it's great to right now pull up Mamata Banerjee, which we all should collectively ask very, very hard questions. We should ask questions. Why is it that the various MPs of Mamata Banerjee did not use the word rape, and only much later on they started even using the word rape, because then it seems like a whitewash of what really happened. I am glad these questions are being asked of Mamata Banerjee. Were these questions asked of Smriti Irani during Hathras? Gaurav, did you question Smriti Irani? No, you did.
We all did stories.
During
we all did stories.
No,
whether it's
we
a
all
Gaurav
did
Sawant
stories
who
is
does
a
it,
different
or a
thing.
Preeti Chaudhary who does
Let
it,
me also speak of at the time when Brij Bhushan Saran was accused of allegations of sexual misconduct with our wrestlers. It was made political before even we spoke of it as a basic women rights issues of sexual harassment. So let's not somewhere down the line get into this whole facade that there is this Khan Market gang suddenly silent. I am sorry. Let's, this is all hypocrisy, and let's at least put that to bed and accept
I think what we must admit here is that rape will be continued to be used as a political tool for eternity until laws are strengthened. We need actual deterrent. I'd still like to ask, why hasn't India criminalized marital rape? Is there no concept of consent in our country? There isn't. And rape culture is deep-rooted in patriarchy, and that we all know. There's no concept of consent even in our homes. I'm sorry, we're still in a society where the father always plays the dominant figure, except for certain societies like parts of Kerala, etc., where the mothers play a strong role. But largely, we're still looking at the father's word is the last word. The man of the house usually, the entire family fears. And the children are seeing exactly what they see. Many of them living in small households. The mother always has to, be more submissive. So that's just the concept of our society and the construct of it. And ultimately, India is just one of the only 36 countries in the world that still has not criminalized marital rape. And that happens every day in this country.
Do you think, Nalini, we're almost out of time, but do you think that this particular cycle of, outrage, the questions being asked, will once again result in, committees being formed, laws having to be strengthened or amended, or, that kind of thing?
Sure.
Because even in the Nirbhaya case, the anger on the streets was not political. It was organic. The anger was from the people. I'm sure, parties were there on the sidelines trying to stir things up. But there is a sense that this is organic this time.
To what extent will you strengthen laws? How harsh will you make the laws so that it becomes a deterrent? Like right now also, for rape cases, you can get punished for 10 years imprisonment. For aggravated rape cases, you can get present for 20 years. Is that stopping anybody? I don't think so. So it's not an issue of strengthening the laws. It's an issue of implementing properly, and not just implementing properly in terms of the courts, but more importantly, the police. Like today, we are all sitting here talking about the Kolkata case. Just a couple of days back, I think I read a data point that there are almost 70 to 80 rape cases
a day
that happen in India on a daily basis. So what about the other 69 women who might have gotten raped during this time that we've been discussing the Kolkata story?
And there was one in Muzaffarpur, there was one in Uttarakhand
Precisely.
that have made headlines during this right now.
Is any one rape, any one incident worse than the other? I mean, there are degrees, of course, but that doesn't mean that the women who are just not in the limelight do not deserve the justice. So it's a problem of investigation, how the investigations happen. And this we're talking in a country where there are police officials, where there are doctors who themselves are accused.
So then
of
I want to ask this
women.
question. After Hathras, Kathua, Manipur, every other, the wrestlers' protests, what's happening in Tamil Nadu, the Muzaffarpur issue, Uttarakhand, and like you said, 86 rapes on a daily basis in this country, making us something of a global rape capital, as it were. And it gives me no joy in saying that, because it's a truly terrible, terrible, ignominious thing for a country to have. But if it is about enforcement, then I simply want to ask, what does it take to enforce better?
Well,
free the police of political control. You have to free the police of political control to investigate these
Gaurav,
cases.
that's really not feasible. I'll tell you why. Because politics will always play a role in issues like this, especially issues that garner such a large societal reaction. Politics, you cannot separate the politics from the police.
So there are departments, there are countries that have they have a system where the police police the police. you have a department in the police that looks at actions of the police. It pulls up people who haven't carried out a scientific investigation. There are laid out standard operating procedures that need to be followed. That system needs to be brought in.
Okay.
From the ramparts of the Red Fort, you had Prime Minister Narendra Modi who said, "ये डर होना चाहिए कि लटकना पड़ेगा. अगर आप लटकाएंगे तो लोग डरेंगे. अगर आप नहीं लटकाएंगे और वहां पर भी वो human rights वाले आ जाएंगे कि नहीं लटकाओ नहीं, गलती हो जाती है, सुधार देंगे, वो नहीं होगा."
Ultimately, with, of course, policing, politicizing, though I believe cases like this should be politicized, because what else are the damn politicians are there for? But one good thing they'll do is politicize it. But that aside, two cases I would think. One was the Mathura case, and why I just want to put this in perspective is because it's a mindset problem in this country. A 14-year-old child in the late 70s had gotten raped. She was a tribal, and at the back of it, sexual harassment laws were set. I think that was a watershed moment in laws against sexual harassment, and then of course came Nirbhaya. But why is the onus to try and free, or the taint of rape on women all the time? Because let's look at it. There have been two. Bhavari Devi, till date, is ostracized from her society. She was gang raped in the early 90s. Number two, Suzette Jordan. And you and I both know the kind of language that was used against her, some of it from the incumbent West Bengal chief minister at the time. They have been the only two survivors who have actually openly come out and till date are fighting for, to get rid of, or at least the bias that the entire country has when it comes down to rape.
Last point, Shiv. You asked what is the solution.
Completely
I think the solution is to bring in more reformist measures than populist.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, all politicians, judiciary, police, and us, we're all cut from the same cloth. We need to first stop movies that glorifies masculinity.
Okay.
When women say no, it means a yes. All those things really need to end.
This story is clearly not going to end with just one episode of Democratic Newsroom, so I sense that we're going to be doing it over the next few days as well. We were talking about a watershed moment, and Nirbhaya was really supposed to be that, but we're still talking about why so many rapes still happen and why this continues to dominate the headlines this last 1 week. It's going to continue to happen, and we will keep the spotlight on it. Thanks for watching Democratic Newsroom.